Hello viewers and welcome to another commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm overjoyed to share with you another video sent in to me courtesy of Barry Wardle, one of the founding members of the Guardians of Tyr, which is a gaming event organizer located in London, England. This specific match was filmed at Northants Wargamers, which itself is a gaming club located in Northampton, England. To the left resides gentleman Ian Russell, whom has opted to play as our second-to-be-released Eldar faction Phoenix Lord Trait Warlord Baharoth. He's beginning the game in control of our initiative token, and at the opposite end of the table we see one of our first two Tyranid faction warlords. It is Old One-Eye, piloted by Fergus Chisholm-Brown, and his choice of selected synapse unit is going to be the Stalking Lictor. Note, at the very northmost section of this video, we can see that our first planet is going to be Baharroth, the forced discard planet, and it looks as though our first deploy action of the game is going to be the 3-cost Soaring Falcon placed upon planet number 4. It's got a couple command icons, an attack value of 1, 5 hit points, and it's going to be monumentally difficult for Old One-Eye to pin down because it happens to possess the mobile keyword, which allows it to potentially shift location at the onset of the combat phase. Plus, it's got 2 command icons, so it matches the allotment of the Stalking Lictor, so that could be a very frustrating unit indeed. We've got a copy of the Warlord friend, the Bloodied Reavers, now garrisoned at planet number 2, 2 cost, 2 attack, 2 hit points, 1 command icon, plus 2 attack value bonus whenever a Warlord happens to be present at that planet, and it looks as though something rather unconventional indeed. Our Tyranid player plays a copy of Consumption. That is an interesting deploy action. It's going to necessitate that each player sacrifices a unit at each and every planet. So the Soaring Falcon is gone, the Bloodied Reavers is gone, and we also see a discarded copy of the 0-cost limited keyword, 1 attack, 1 hit point, 1 command icon Ripper Swarm. Wow. Well, looks like we've got another copy of Bloodied Reavers positioned at planet number 1, and let's see where our warlords decide to show up. Old One-Eye and Baharroth are both 2/6 warlords. Baharroth has the mobile keyword, whereas Old One-Eye, whenever he readies, you can trigger a reaction to strip half of the damage off of him, round it up. Looks like Old One-Eye goes to planet number 1, Baharroth goes to planet number 2, and that's going to be the Stalking Lictor showing up at planet number 3. Old One-Eye is going to win a couple of cards from planet number 1, Baharroth. Baharroth is going to win 1 resource from planet number 2, and our Tyranid, Old One-Eye, is going to end up accruing a total of 2 resource tokens courtesy of planet number 3. So planet number 1, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be that random card discard planet, and Baharroth, if he decides not to shift away from that planet, could have potentially triggered Yvonne, which necessitates both players pick an army unit from their hand and put it into play directly into their HQ, but considering Old One-Eye is the opponent, that would probably be a rather poor life choice to trigger that effect, and it looks as though Baharroth shifts to the first planet. He therefore maintains initiative. The Bloodied Reavers takes a swing at Old One-Eye. Spore Burst is discarded as shield, so 4-2 is going to be 2 damage tokens dealt out to Old One-Eye. Old One-Eye himself takes a swing, presumably at that copy of the Bloodied Reavers, but the timely interjection of the Eldar event Empower is going to mitigate that damage entirely, just deflecting that blow. We're going to come to the end of a combat round here, then all of our units are going to ready, and it's going to be up to Old One-Eye to determine whether or not he wants to trigger that healing reaction or not. Looks like Old One-Eye triggers that reaction, and he decides to retreat, so that's going to be that forced random card discard from Fergus's hand, and Old One-Eye is now just sitting at 2 damage tokens, plus Baharroth being captured means that's going to be +1 green strong point icon for Ian, so rather well done. And now the Stalking Lictor, unfortunately for our Tyranid player, doesn't actually trigger a battle, so therefore That's going to be the Stalking Lictor returning to Old One-Eye's HQ as well. We're in the process of resolving our first HQ phase, so both of our players are going to dip their hands into our token bank, fetch out 4 resource tokens for themselves. They're each going to scoop the top 2 cards off of their deck, add them immediately to their hand, and now our initiative is going to bounce over to our Tyranid player. Looks as though each of these planets is going to be oriented so that it's facing the player that's going to be possessing initiative at that planet, when that planet happens to be the first planet. We've got a copy of the Termagant Sentry positioned at planet number 4 at the moment by our Tyranid player. It's going to be a 1 command icon, 1/2 unit for just 1 resource. Whenever a Termagant token happens to leave play at that planet, you can ready that unit, but what is something Old One-Eye doesn't really run? The answer is Termagant tokens, so I would imagine that's just going to be 1 cost, 1 command. And speaking of that cost, for that allotment of command icons, we've now got a copy of Void Pirate stationed at our new planet number 5, a Void Pirate under the control of our Baharroth player for a little bit of an early game +1 card bonus. That's going to be stationed at Carnath, the wild card planet, which allows you to trigger the battle ability of any other planet, and therefore that's going to be a very appealing destination, possibly for the Stalking Lictor, possibly for Old One-Eye, because he'd be able to deny his opponent of 2 cards and a resource, get a card and a resource for himself, and he'd be able to trigger any battle ability he'd like, such as Aatrox Prime or Elwith to deal damage, draw a card, or Farron to rout a unit, maybe even activate Yvarn twice, just to start getting out some enormous Tyranid elite units that Old One-Eye is so fond of playing. But at planet number 1, we've got a Hellion Gang to the left. It's a 2/2 for 2 with command icon, and it has the flying keyword, so it cuts in half any incoming damage. And at planet number 1, we've got some very interesting stuff indeed. We've got a copy of the signature army unit, the Lurking Hormigaunt. For the cost of 2, it attacks for 3. It's got a command icon, and it has 1 hit point. And further, as a reaction, whenever it is assigned damage, you can reassign up to 2 of that damage to Old One-Eye, and let's say Old One-Eye shows up at planet number 4, maybe he takes a swing of 2 for the Lurking Hormigaunt, then he swings, kills that Void Pirate, he ends up being readied at the end of the round, he takes that 2 damage off of himself, so it's as if it never happened in the first place, and then additionally Carnath might allow him the opportunity to, trigger any of these desirable abilities, like Elwith, he could dig through his deck for his signature attachment or support or whatever kind of victory condition type card he's looking for, like a Shrieking Harpy, whatever it happens to be. But at planet number 1, we've also got a monumentally powerful Ravenous Haruspex. It's a 5-cost Tyranid Elite, just 1 command icon, 3 attack value, 5 hit points, and whenever it happens to destroy an enemy army unit with an attack, like that Hellion Gang, you generate a number of resources equal to the cost associated with that enemy unit limit once per phase. But planet number 1, that's going to be the Haruspex, making all of the difference. That's going to be +1 resource for our Tyranid player. Planet number 2, the destination of Baharroth. We'll have to see whether or not he moves. That's going to be Farron, the routing planet, but it's also going to mean +2 resources for Baharroth. Planet number 3, that's where the Stalking Lictor showed up. That's going to be a card and a resource for our Tyranid player. Planet number 4 is going to be a couple of cards for our Tyranid player, and planet number 5, Old One-Eye shows up at that planet, and that means he's going to block off that enemy Void Pirate and potentially kill it off, and potentially trigger the ability of Taurus there. Carnath, my bad. But Old One-Eye is going to gain a card and a resource from planet number 5, and we've got battle breaking out at planet number 1, soon to be planet number 2. I spoke too soon. Baharroth decides to relocate himself to the same planet as that Stalking Lictor during combat, and we're also going to see battle break out at planet number 5. So this is going to be pretty interesting indeed. I would imagine that Hellion Gang is about to get smashed into bits. Note that the topmost Eldar faction unit in our Eldar players' discard pile is going to be a copy of the Soaring Falcon, therefore Gift of Isha isn't going to be too monumentally helpful. Looks like we see a copy of Power from Pain being played by our Baharroth player, a very unconventional thing to see. That's going to force the opponent to sacrifice an army unit, and why not get rid of that dumbass Termagant Sentry? It's really not doing much. So for the cost of 1 or I think 2 resources, why not get rid of that Termagant Sentry? Combat is going to break out at planet number 1. That is going to be the Lurking Hormigaunt taking a swing of 3 against that Hellion Gang. That's going to be dropped down to 1.5, rounded up to 2. And that is definitely a bit of a shame. Note that Planum is not in play, and therefore I think that swing of the Lurking Hormigaunt was a little bit suboptimal, because why not attack with the Ravenous Haruspex? Either you achieve the same result, which is going to be the Dead Hellion Gang, or you force your opponent to discard a shield card if they want to prevent your Ravenous Haruspex from killing off that unit. So it looks like Old One-Eye basically deprived himself of getting rid of one of his opponent's cards or generating some resources for himself. So that's definitely a bit of shame. And note that Lurking Hormigaunt should be exhausted. But looks like we've got combat breaking out at planet number 3. Baharroth swings for 2, deals out a couple points of damage to that Stalking Lictor. We come to the end of combat. I can only imagine that the Stalking Lictor is going to be running away from that planet, but then that means Baharroth is going to win Aatrox Prime, and he's going to have the opportunity to deal damage to each and every unit sitting in Old One-Eye's HQ. It looks like our Tyranid player does not choose to retreat. Are we going to see a copy of Ferocious Strength or not? So that's going to be Acid Maw discarded as shields. Therefore, there we go. Stalking Lictor is at 3 damage, and that is going to be Ferocious Strength. That means until the end of the combat round, the Stalking Lictor is going to gain Brutal, and therefore it is going to swing for an almighty 4 at our Phoenix Lord trait Eldar Faction Warlord. That is going to be Empower discarded, and that is going to be 2 points of damage dealt out to Baharroth. So at the end of a combat round, now the Stalking Lictor retreats, or maybe it does not, but note we did see Yavarn triggered, and that is going to be a copy of the monumentally expensive 6-cost Shrieking Harpy that was put into play by our Tyranid player, and note the activation of Yavarn did not result in our Eldar player putting an army unit into play. Very nicely done by our Tyranid player indeed. That's going to be a very timely copy of Fall Back, saving the life of our Stalking Lictor, so it's going to be returned to play from the discard pile into our Tyranid player's HQ, but Baharroth at the end of that combat round is of course going to ready. Then he's got a combat turn. There are no enemy units present. That means that's going to be 1 point of damage dealt out to each and every one of those Tyranid units. The Lurking Hormigaunt's damage is going to be reassigned to Old One-Eye, and he's going to be able to heal that away anyway, so great play there on part of our Tyranid player, but the Stalking Lictor takes a point of damage. That the 2/5 flying keyword Shrieking Harpy takes 1 point of damage, which may not seem like much, but since the damage from Aatrox Prime does not come through an attack and it's not halved, each and every point of damage you can throw on a big nasty Tyranid elite is going to be monumentally helpful, and that copy of Ravenous Haruspex is also dealt a bit, has also taken a point of damage as well. So note Baharroth was ready at in his HQ there, and when Old One-Eye goes to activate the battle ability of Karnath, we saw a copy of Foretell basically block off that effect. So whatever Karnath would have triggered, unfortunately Old One-Eye is not going to be able to derive any kind of benefit from that planet, and that copy of Foretell, a 0-cost event, is going to result in Baharroth drawing a card to immediately replace it, so it's going to thin his deck. It's going to block off the opponent's opportunity to activate a battle ability, and therefore it is an absolutely spectacular play and a good card. If you're playing Eldar, I definitely encourage you to play at least a couple copies of Foretell. But what exactly are we going to see? We're going to see another HQ phase having come and gone. Note the initiative token is once again going to be in the possession of Ian here. Our new 5th planet is going to be the Move a Target Unit Planet Planum, and in our Tyranid player's HQ, he has just got a tremendous glut of units. Our Tyranid player has 1 planet type icon of each kind, so if he wins at planet number 1, planet number 2, that could be the game, or if he wins at planet number 2 and planet number 3, that could be the game as well. But considering the absolute dearth of green strongpoint type icons anywhere on the field here, looks like Baharroth is going to have to determine some kind of alternative victory condition apart from those green icons. Earliest he might be able to win would be planets 1, 2, and then 4 through red type icons, or on the same could be said planet 2, 3, and 4 through blue type icons. But would you look at Baharroth's hand? Looks as though he has got just a giant lack of units here, and this is something pretty frightening we see from our Tyranid player. So Baharroth must be out of units because he's got a lot of resources, but he's already had to pass. Our Tyranid puts out a copy of Ripper Swarm, positioned at planet number 3. Again, limited card, but it's got a command icon for no resources. Planet number 2, which is going to be incredibly useful. It's potentially our Tyranid player's victory condition planet, or it's just going to be fabulously useful. That's going to be a copy of the 2-cost, 2-attack, 2-hit point Scything Hormagaunts. They've got a command icon. Whenever they show up to a planet, you infest that planet, and that works with the Shrieking Harpy. It works with Digestion Pool, any number of different events as well, like Spore Burst that we earlier saw discarded as shields, which as a deploy action allows you to recur a 3 or lower cost Tyranid unit from your discard pile into play at an infested planet. So, looks like our command phase is ongoing. Baharroth shows up at planet number 4, Old One-Eye instead shows up to planet number 1, and the Stalking Lictor shows up to planet number 5. That Ravenous Haruspex now has a copy of the attachment Acid Maw associated with it, which means that its attacks can no longer be prevented, like its damage can no longer be prevented, and that's going to be tremendously useful, because what does a Ravenous Haruspex want to do that it did not, unfortunately, do during our previous round is kill off enemy units. And if you can't use Indomitable, if you can't use shield cards to block that effect, it's potentially going to be able to generate a ton of resources. Unfortunately, it's going to be up to Old One-Eye to try to kill off that copy of the Bloodied Reavers. Note, Old One-Eye does command initiative at planet number 1, so what exactly are we going to see? Old One-Eye wins a couple of resources from planet number 1. Planet number 2 is going to be a card and resource for Old One-Eye. Planet number 3 is going to be a couple of cards for Old One-Eye. Planet number 4 is going to be a card and resource for Baharroth, and planet number 5 is going to be a card and a resource thanks to the Stalking Lictor for our Tyranid player. So, planet number 1, Old One-Eye is going to have to take a swing, potentially killing off that copy of the Bloodied Reavers, and it's going to be up to our Eldar player here. Either he can let that unit die, or he can shield and then attack in return, or he can just kind of, I guess he's probably going to want to retreat it at the end of combat. What I was concerned about is if you were to not retreat with that Bloodied Reavers, you definitely don't want to allow your opponent to have that Ravenous Haruspex attack at combat round 2. First thing, kill off that unit, generate a couple of resources, but looks like Baharroth is trying to decide, does he want to go to planet number 5? Does he want to go to planet number 3? Elowith is going to be great in that you'll be able to quite handily kill off that copy of Ripper Swarm. 2 attack is, it's pretty trivial to kill off a 1 hit point Tyranid. It's not as though Ferocious Strength or something like that is going to pose a big threat to Baharroth, but looks like he's decided to stay put. And that's going to be Old One-Eye taking a swing, and that Bloodied Reavers is just going to be outright destroyed. So, Theron is going to be captured by Old One-Eye. That's going to be 1 red material type icon for him, but there are no enemy units to rout. All those nasty elites are going to bounce back to Old One-Eye's HQ, and now it's going to be up to Old One-Eye to try to win the game by sending his Warlord to planet number 1. The Stalking Lictor can show up anywhere to win command, but what exactly is Baharroth going to trigger? Baharroth, I can only imagine, is going to select Aatrox Prime as his choice of battle ability. No, looks like that is going to be Elowith, and therefore I feel as though it would have been far more optimal for Baharroth to shift himself to planet number 3, kill that Ripper Swarm, and then activate Elowith that way, because that way the following round your opponent would presumably be denied a couple of different cards from the Ripper Swarm now sitting at that planet, but, we'll have to see how things end up being resolved. Certainly our Eldar player's got a mountain of resource tokens for himself. He was able to look at the top 3 cards of his deck for any one card that he would like. Perhaps it's going to be some powerful army units. But the problem here is our Tyranid is almost assuredly going to be sending his entire HQ contingent to planet number 1. Baharroth will have to show up at planet number 1 if he wants to try to block off his opponent from winning the game. That is going to be 11 resources on the part of our Tyranid player, but would you look at Old One-Eye's, stockpile? That is just a fearsome number of resources as well, and it looks as though Old One-Eye, who's been doing much better economically, is probably going to be having quite a few more cards in hand than will our Eldar player. But at planet number 1, as soon as that Shrieking Harpy shows up, that's going to be able to eventually ready after the end of the first combat round. Note that our initiative token is in Old One-Eye's possession, and the instant that Fergus is going to be able to declare that Shrieking... Oh my god. As soon as he would have been able to declare Shrieking Harpy as an attacker, he'd have exhausted each and every enemy army and token unit present at that planet, and that's something he could have done each and every at the beginning of each and every combat round. But if you missed it, that's going to be a copy of Doom played by our Eldar players, so Doom and Consumption both in the same game. That is going to be destroying each and every non-unique Tyranid and Eldar unit in either player's HQ. That's going to be a dead Shrieking Harpy. That is going to be 6 resources gone, although it was put into play by Yvarn. That's going to be the Ravenous Haruspex, a 5-cost unit, dead. I don't really think it did anything this entire game, and that's going to be the Acid Maw gone as well, which, if memory serves, is a 2-cost attachment. And then that Lurking Hormigaunt was slain, and that is just an absolute nightmare. But positioned at planet number 1, we've got a copy of the Virulent Spore Sacs, 2-cost, 1 command, 0 attack, 1 hit point. You can sacrifice it to deal 1 damage to each and every enemy unit at that planet, plus you can infest that planet, but it's already infested. And wouldn't you know it, we've got another copy of I almost swore. That's going to be a copy of Shrieking Harpy, not Shrieking Hormigaunt, positioned at planet number 1. It, again, need I remind you, is now going to be, thanks to an affixed copy of Regeneration, a 2-attack value, 7 hit point flying keyword unit that has an attachment which you can exhaust to strip away a couple points of damage. And it is ready, so a little bit of a spoiler alert here. Old One-Eye, I can only imagine, is going to show up at planet number 1. He's going to have initiative no matter what. At the very beginning of the first combat round, the Shrieking Harpy is going to exhaust itself to declare itself as an attacker. Each and every enemy, army, and token unit that does not have the elite trait is going to be exhausted, and that is just an absolute nightmare, because we've got a copy of the signature army unit Baharroth's Hawks sitting at planet number 2. I can only imagine it's going to relocate itself momentarily to planet number 1. It's a 2-command icon unit, 0-2, but at the same planet as Baharroth, it's going to be able to attack for 3. We've got a copy of the 3-cost Warlord Friend, the Eldritch Corsair, positioned at planet number 1. It's got a command icon, 2-3 unit, plus 2 attack value at the same planet as a Warlord, but that is not going to make any difference whatsoever. Let's see here. Thanks to the presence of 3 command icons against... let's see. Our Tyranid is 2, 3, 4, total of, I believe it was 5 command icons at the time, so that's going to be a card and resource at planet number 1 for Old One-Eye. It's going to be 2 cards at planet number 2 for Baharroth, but that copy of the Virulent Spore Sacs is going to be exploding. As a combat action to deal 1 point of damage to each and every present unit, that's going to be a copy of Star Cannon discarded to preserve the life of that Bealtaine Guardians for an additional moment. Note, it's not going to be hanging around for too much longer. Looks as though, alright, so maybe that was a bit of a takesy backsies there. Yep, there we go. So the Baharroth's Hawks is going to be correctly positioned at the first planet, even though it kind of missed its opportunity to mobile to that destination, and as a compensatory measure, we're going to add a point of damage to it because it should have been present for the Virulent Spore Sacs to explode. But looks like the Shrieking Harpy is going to be declaring an attack against something, presumably Baharroth. It's going to be attacking for 2. That's going to be a copy of Gift of Isha, discarded as shields. Why not get rid of it since our Eldar player doesn't have any resource tokens left? That's going to preserve Baharroth's life, but that's going to be the Eldritch Corsair, a 4 attack value unit, exhausted. That's going to be the Bealtaine Guardians, a 1 attack value unit, exhausted. And that is also going to be the Baharroth's Hawks, a 3 attack value unit, exhausted. Baharroth himself is going to take a swing, kill off that copy of the Scything Hormigaunts, but good luck killing a 2/7 flyer. it's going to be able to attack first no matter what. It's going to have all of that Eldar army on indefinite lockdown. The instant Baharroth is going to be bloodied, it's going to be game over for Ian, and even Baharroth would be able to swing for 2, cut down to 1 against that Shrieking Harpy, and, the Shrieking Harpy is going to be able to peel 2 points of damage off of it, courtesy of that copy of the Affixed Regeneration, so that is just horrific for our Eldar player. Looks like there's absolutely nothing he's going to be able to do to try to take this one home, but we ended up seeing that copy of Baharroth's Hawks killed, presumably by that Stalking Lictor. We're going to come to the bottom of combat round 2 here, and that is going to be another opportunity for the Shrieking Harpy to bloody Baharroth. It's going to take a swing directed at Baharroth. Do we have an additional shield or not? That's going to be the GG. Very good game, very well played by both of our players. Congratulations to Fergus Chisholm-Brown for managing to take this one home, for successfully piloting Old One-Eye to victory, but all the same, a rather decently played game by Ian Russell as well. And certainly, we just watched a rather unconventionally constructed Baharroth deck absolutely crumple under the pressure that is the unique Tyranid Carnifex, the special character Old One-Eye. But this was an enjoyable match. Nevertheless, a monumental thank you to Barry Wardle and the Guardians of Tyr for allowing me the opportunity to spectate this game, to commentate this game, and to publish this video upon my channel. Hopefully you viewers enjoyed this match, but as always, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, as ever, you're always encouraged to share this content, because the more engagement these videos receive, the more individuals stand to be exposed to Conquest. They might give this living card game a try, enjoy what they experience, someday join our community, and of course, with us, continue to send the message to Fantasy Flight Games, telling them to continue development and support of this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, I would encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if you ever feel so inclined to support the Hive Tyrant to help me improve this channel, I would be absolutely honored, humbled, and enormously flattered were you to consider making a monthly $1 or $2 donation to my Patreon. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.